Welcome to Adventures in Landlording. Each episode, we answer some questions, and we generally just give incredible wisdom about how you can be a better landlord. I am Krista. This is Jonathan.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing today?
Great.
Okay.
Great.
That was very convincing. I believe you. Yeah, you're doing
No
great.
further questions.
No further questions. No follow-up. Are you excited for the stories we have to share today?
I am so amped. Let's do it. What do you got for me?
Ooh, you don't even know. So this first one is a real doozy. It comes from Reddit, from someone with perhaps one of my favorite usernames, OKPotato7025.
Oh, I know OK Potato.
Best friend?
Yes.
That doesn't sound like
He's
a best
okay.
friend answer. He's an okay potato.
He's an OK Potato.
Yeah. Well, this mediocre spud says, my landlord refused to do a walkthrough when I moved out and new tenants are moved in. Okay, so inherently, this mediocre potato, living in a rental. I'm going to set the scene for you.
Okay.
It is December. Use your imagination. I know it's not
It's
December right
August.
now. Get out of here, Jonathan. Picture the snow is falling.
Mm-hmm.
The Christmas carols are caroling,
Mm-hmm.
or the music of your denominational choice.
Yes.
Everything is happening. It is December of 2023. And in early December 2023, the tenant let their landlord know they would like to move out before the end of the year.
Nice.
If that doesn't raise a red flag for you, check your flag closet because you should be having some waving away.
I have a flag closet?
You don't? This is so embarrassing.
Oh, no. All right. So they didn't give much notice.
Didn't give much notice, said, hey, we want to move out. And the tenant said, what is the exit process? When can I schedule a walkthrough? They didn't really ever get an answer on that. They say, all right, well, shoot, screw this joint. I'm moving out. So they pack everything up. They move out on a Sunday, and the office was closed. So
Great.
they then call the following day on Monday and say, hey, I have moved out. When can I do my walkthrough? What should I do now? The landlords here are a husband and wife.
Okay.
So they talk to the wife. They say, when can I do my walkthrough? Wife says, my husband is really sick. We can't do a walkthrough. Tenant's like, okay. So they continue on their merry way. I don't know if you've heard of this funky little nuance, but in rental property management, there's this thing called a security deposit.
What?
Ever heard of it? I know. So eventually, they don't give a timeline on this, but eventually they're like, hey, where's my security deposit check? So the tenant calls back and they're like, hey, where's my security deposit check? And the husband is the one on the phone this time, and he says, well, we need to do a walkthrough. Only problem is, they had new tenants who had already moved in and lived there for at least a week by the time this phone conversation was happening.
Great.
The thing with security deposits, well, there are several things. Let me put a kibosh on my opinion here and ask you for yours. We have very little details about where this took place or how long the lease was. But what are your initial thoughts when you hear tenant moved out, no walkthrough, security deposit?
Yeah. Well, as we pointed out, the tenant didn't give much notice. But whatever, that's going to happen, right? That happens. And when they did move out, the landlord should have done the walkthrough. So what if the husband was sick? It sounds like the tenant was already out of the unit, so it was already vacant. I mean, he could go through there and cough his way all over the place while he's looking for any damage, because that's really what needs to be done. But if he is bedridden with illness, why can't his wife walk through? Why can't she do the inspection?
Right. It feels a little sexist, if I'm being honest with you.
Women
can inspect properties too, okay? So let her go in there and do a walkthrough. It's better for your business. But I'm sorry, I jumped up on my sexism high horse. Would you like to continue?
Sure. Now, if I were the tenant, I would have just done my own little walkthrough, just so I have this for later, because they don't give any indication here that the landlords were weird before this. But I'm going to bet they were in some ways.
Probably.
Even if it was just, you do your thing, I'll do my thing kind of weirdness. If I was the tenant and I was moving out and the landlord wasn't available to do a walkthrough, I would go through with my phone. I would narrate. I would take video of everything, photos of everything, just in case something weird happens. Because the way that it actually transpired with no walkthrough done by anyone, now there's new tenants, it's too late to do a walkthrough. How will they possibly do a walkthrough? And even if there's damage, how are they going to know that it's not from the new tenants who've been living there for over a week?
That's exactly it. There's really no way to suss out who did what damage. Even things like normal wear and tear, which usually automatically will fall to the landlord. You're going to struggle if you're a landlord who is not regularly inspecting your properties, but at a minimum, conducting move-in and move-out inspections. There are ways to make that process very easy, such as with TurboTenant.com's free condition reports. You can use them, customize them for your properties, have a digital record. That way you avoid these situations, because here's the real kicker. When you look at security deposit laws, they vary, generally state by state, county by county, but all of them have some kind of grace period in which the landlord has time to document all of the deductions that they're going to take from the amount that the security deposit is. When you don't meet that timeline, at a minimum, you need to give that money back. There are also states like New Jersey where you are penalized and you can be sued for up to 3 times the amount of the original security deposit if you fail to provide the detailed receipt of anything that you're deducting. So even though the tenant didn't necessarily give full notice, we don't know what their arrangement was, but generally speaking, if it's a long-term lease, you need to give at least like 30 to 90 days notice. If it's month to month, it's usually 30 days. Clearly that wasn't followed here, but even with that, normally it'd be a situation in which the landlord might be able to recoup some of that lost rent from the inadequate notice. However, because you have taken so long to actually go through and detail out what needs to be taken from the security deposit, you kind of lose the right to do it.
Yep.
So the landlord should really just hand over the security deposit and move along, because they've already made several mistakes here that are really not recommended. And hopefully they'll rectify them moving forward, because it just makes it a smoother process for both the landlord and the tenant.
Yeah. And look, I get it. You've got a vacant unit. You want to get people in there as soon as possible. You want to keep that rental income flowing. That is the entire reason you got into this, right?
Heck yeah.
But there's still a process. There's still a process to people leaving, new people coming in. You're not going to move new people in without signing a lease agreement. At least I hope you're not. You're also not going to move them in without doing a tenant screening report. At least I hope you're not. And assuming you're doing all those things, you also have to do the stuff that happens at the end of a lease, which is your walk-through inspection, your move-out inspection, giving back the security deposit, or at least determining how much you're going to keep. You've got to do all that stuff. Like, just because maybe you didn't like this tenant and they didn't give you adequate notice, you can't be like, all right, well, screw you. Let's move on to the next one. You've still got to go through all of it, check all the boxes, make sure you're running your business the way you should.
And that's that on that.
That's that on that. You can put that on your that and that.
Put that on your that and take it there.
Take it to the that store.
They're offering refunds this weekend only.
Really?
Yeah. Are you looking to have free condition reports at your disposal anytime, any day, any night? Sign up for TurboTenant.com and we have all the condition reports you could ever possibly want for free.
Okie dokie. This one comes from the land of TikTok.
Doo-doo-doo.
The poster is Apollo Star, 2 R's, 22.
Wow.
Okay, so this story unfolds over 2 TikToks. The first one was posted in July. The other one was just like 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So the July one, it is Apollo Star telling a story of how she was on vacation in Ireland, and her landlord called and said, hey, is it cool if I let the bee people in to see if there's bees in your walls? And she says, sure. As I think anyone would say, right?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the landlord did that. The bee people came in and they discovered there were, in fact, bees in the walls. All right. What did they do then? They cut a hole and then they said, solve that one. And they left. So the end of this first TikTok, the tenant shows that their spare room, which good thing I guess it's a spare, but still, their spare room is just covered in bees. Some of them dead, some of them alive, very much buzzing around, and there is a big hole in the wall.
And we have footage of this.
We have footage of this. We probably played it for you just now.
Shoot.
Yep, we probably just put it up. All right, so that's wacky, right? And I actually first came across this because a reporter had reached out for an expert opinion on what the heck should have happened here. So what should have happened here is that the landlord should have gotten a beekeeper, hopefully professional, or at least somebody who knows what they're doing, to come in and relocate that hive. Because bees are funny little creatures. They're not just going to go if you open a window. They're going to be like, no, but that's my home. My queen is in there. I got to go back to my queen.
Very
So
loyal.
you need someone to come in and take the whole hive out. Also, don't know if you've heard, the bees are in trouble. We like the bees.
Mm-hmm.
They shouldn't be in our walls, but still, we're not just going to like spray them with pesticides and watch them all curl up and die. That would be very sad. We want the bees to still be alive, just preferably not in this rental unit.
Can't believe that this is going
Believe.
Truly. So the solution that they came up with was just to cut a hole in the wall and say, bees are going to be. It's fine.
Let them be. Yep. So, yeah, that was wacky.
Yeah.
All right. Then this TikToker did a follow-up video in which her nose ring got larger.
Love this for her. Yeah.
I know. It's great. She gave a little more context. So there were 80,000 bees, apparently. They are in New York State. And in New York State, honeybees are a protected species, as I think they are pretty much everywhere now in America. But that means, once again, you can't just spray them and forget them. You need to bring in some bee experts. I did a real quick Google search. Tons and tons of bee experts out there in New York State who would happily come remove this bee colony for free. But once again, that's not what happened. A beekeeper did come, and they basically were like, wow, look at all those bees. And then they left.
Are we sure that was a beekeeper and not just a bee pointer or something?
She did point out, she said she has a business card for this beekeeper. So they've got a business card.
Okay. Well, find a new beekeeper because this is not their first business, you know?
All right. And then the way all this really goes wrong is the landlord like stopped communicating. And I guess at some point they said they'd knock a few $100 off the rent. But once again, the first post was in July, and this TikToker says she's only been living there since March. So it's, we're only a few months into this thing, and we've already had this terrible. And she also mentions there was like gun violence in an adjoining unit. So like, it sounds like not a great unit, or maybe not a great landlord, or both.
Truly.
So this is wacky.
It's super wacky. And while we are all fans of bees, as legally mandated, I will say that this would probably fall under a pest control situation. Yeah. And oftentimes there are clauses in leases, or at least, even if it's not specifically written out, if there's an overwhelming pest infestation, that is usually cause to break a lease without penalty.
That's correct.
Which I think is the bare minimum that can go on here. Because, geez.
So when the reporter had reached out for that expert opinion, one of their questions was, can they break the lease? And also, what should the landlord have done? So you just covered, they probably could break that lease.
Yeah.
And what should the landlord have done? There is a certain timeline for how long a landlord has to fix something. If it's a critical repair, it's typically like 3 to 7 days. And then if it's a non-critical repair, like maybe a leaky faucet or something, they could have 30 days. 30-ish days. Yeah. Sooner's better. And your tenant's going to love it if you hop right on it, regardless of what the problem is. But if you have 80,000 bees in the wall and you know about it because now you've already called out a beekeeper who cut a hole, said hi, bye, you need to fix it.
You need to. That is a critical situation.
That is a critical repair.
Yeah. You can get into a ton of trouble for not actually jumping on that and resolving the issue within the timeline that you're prescribed by law. So what the heck? Also, why? Just the idea of letting someone live with a room full of bees. Yeah. It sounds like some kind of weird torture device that the Saw guys would have thought up if it was someone who's just committed minor crimes throughout their life.
Yeah.
And this lady seems nice. She doesn't deserve bees.
She does not. Nope. She talks a lot about her cats. I'm sure the cats don't like the bees.
Oh, no. And they can get stung.
Sure. Well, people can get stung too.
Yeah, but I'm very partial to cats.
I know you are.
This is horrible. I really do feel bad for her. I hope that she is able to get out of that lease because especially what I heard you say with the lack of communication, the drop off there, so disappointing. No one anticipates that a hive of bees is going to become, a new tenant.
Yeah. But
like the fact that you're not even communicating with your actual tenant who signed a lease and pays you money to live there, horrifying.
Yeah.
Boo.
Yeah, there are a lot of problems here. The fact that there are bees in the walls, I don't think is something the landlord or anyone really could control. Bees will be bees, right? They're going to move in. I don't know how they got in. I'm assuming it wasn't because there was a hole on the exterior, but maybe. Point is, bees setting up shop in your walls could probably happen to anyone. It's how you deal with it that matters. And how they should have dealt with it is hey, I'll give you a night in a hotel or something. I'm going to have a beekeeper out. They're going to remove all the bees and clean everything up, and it'll be all in ship shape when you come back from the hotel that I'm paying for. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Yeah, that's how you should conduct your business.
Whether you have one door or 100, TurboTenant's all-in-one landlord platform helps you maximize your property management business. Sign up for a free account today at landlordpod.com.
Now, we enter into the final segment, one of our famous, if not most infuriating segments, the Landlord Special. Landlord Special! All landlords are special, but not all landlords belong in the Landlord Special. The Landlord Special is a spot on this show reserved for the worst of the worst, the people who are just making poor choices and punishing tenants accordingly. This particular story comes from my home state here in Colorado, which makes me all the more fired up. Headline here is 54 families evicted without notice in Aurora. This is a report from Fox 31 Denver. Inherently, the city of Aurora illegally evicted 54 families with less than a week's notice, and based on the size of the apartment complex, the tenant should have received at least 10 days' notice. So that's the first major issue. You might be like, well, why? Why were they evicted?
Yes, why?
Were they not paying rent? What was going on? No, it was nothing that the tenants had done. In fact, and this really irks me, it's because the building was inherently falling into disrepair. So tenants did not have access to heat. They did not have access to electricity. They did have access to all of the garbage laying around and parts of the building falling down on them. So all of the things you don't want to happen in a rental property were basically happening here through no fault of the tenants. However, the city of Aurora and the investors who are choosing to remain anonymous, which is very brave of them, so bold, so fun, fresh of them to just not claim their work. Was it you? Oh, we'd be having a very different conversation if it was me. One where I'm crying and repenting and asking for everyone's forgiveness.
All right, so this gets you fired up. Why?
For several reasons. So one, the fact is that whether it's the city's fault for not maintaining the gang violence in the area, which is what the investors are attributing it to, or the investors' fault for not, I don't know, providing the basic necessities for human life, the tenants are the ones who are suffering. 54 families, that's a lot of people, right? And like this was a huge complex.
Yeah.
So it gets me really fired up because it just feels allegedly criminally negligent.
Yeah.
I'm not a lawyer or a policeman, but I am someone who can say, hey, this is really messed up.
Well, and the investors blamed the city.
Of course.
And they said, it's not our fault. The city did this. The city is the one who evicted them. But it's because this wasn't a habitable space.
No.
And it's up to you as the landlord and as the housing provider to provide a habitable space. That's what they're paying for.
It literally is what they're paying for. And everyone assumes the warranty of habitability when they become a housing provider. That means that you are responsible for providing safe, respectable, clean housing. The fact that there was garbage everywhere, the fact that tenants didn't have access to heat or electricity, that's unforgivable.
Yeah.
Get out of the game. You really don't belong here.
And for the investors to say it was because of gang violence, why these things went into disrepair, doesn't even make a little bit of sense. I mean,
right. What gang do you know that's fighting electric boxes and heating appliance? Like what? It doesn't make any sense. You can't control what's going on outside of your rental. You absolutely can control what's going on inside of your rental. And they really should have stepped up before it got this bad, because now there are 54 people who are trying to find housing in an illegally short amount of time. And again, they are the people who suffer, not anyone else. The investors are actually going to try and pursue reopening that particular building.
The same building?
Assuming that they are going to try and make some repairs if they don't decide that that's also the gang's responsibility or whatever. And that's why they're here in the Landlord Special.
Now, if the gang came back and they fixed up the building...
Shoot!
That'd be nice.
That'd be really nice. Give back to your community.
Wasn't that kind of Pablo Escobar's whole thing? Like, he was beloved by the people because he actually provided to them, even though he's also committing a lot of crimes.
Lots of crimes. Yeah, so there is a real redemption story here that's possible, whether that's from the investors being thoroughly embarrassed and shamed from here to hell and back, or the gang stepping up and saying, you know what, we're going to take care of this neighborhood. We're going to provide safe, stable, clean housing.
Yeah.
But somebody should do something for these families because it is just abhorrent how this all went down.
Yeah. Don't be a slumlord.
Don't be a slumlord. It's so easy. Don't do it. That's it for this adventure in landlording. Thanks for joining us. Make sure to subscribe on your podcast player of choice and on YouTube so you don't miss any future episodes. If you have any feedback or questions for us, visit landlordpod.com and reach out today.